Hello everyone, welcome back to Fanblade. This week I've been shopping. Went to a garage sale and I found this weird old thing. Um, it needs a bit of work, it needs cleaning up, it needs a battery cover, and it needs a bit of love. It's had a hard life, this thing, but it must be good. You know it's good because it's been played. That's genuine wear and dirt from being played. So what we're going to do is find out if there's any life in this. Uh, there's a couple of ways I could go here. I can try and chip all this. I'm guessing it's epoxy. I can try and chip all that off and take all that out and replace it, or I'll get a battery on here. And if there's any life in this preamp, then I'll just make a nice wooden cover to go over the top. It's scratched up, it's beaten, it's been played. I don't know what that switch does. That's weird. It's a weird brand as well. I've personally never heard of this brand. It looks like it's trying to be an Ovation. Everything about this guitar screams Ovation, but you do a Google search for Ovation power acoustic guitar, there's nothing there. Try to Google search for Ovation power acoustic double cutaway guitar. There's not a lot of information available, so I don't really know what this is, but I know that it has been played. The neck's quite straight, the action's quite good, there's a little bit of a dip happening here, and it looks like the bridge has been, somebody's tried to fix that at some point. We'll see what we can do about that later, but for now, I want to find out if the electronics work, and if they do, then that's plan A. And plan B is to take the electronics out and rebuild them. We'll get some new strings on it. Yeah. We'll probably replace the tuners as well. The style are not great. And I just happen to have the tuners that we got from the Ashton guitar that suffered a very timely death. They're much better. So we'll stick these on this guitar with new strings and sort out this instrument. Oh, it's alive! And it's only a little bit flat. How about that? I bought a garage sale guitar that's perfectly in tune. Hang on, I need an amp. So that's a kill switch. Alright, so plan A. Going to make a cover plate to try and hide all of this. I'm not going to take any of it out. I will be taking this off though, because I can probably buy a whole replacement unit for that. And while that cover's off, I'll be able to get inside and clean the dust out, because I can see through these holes here. There's a fair amount of cobwebs in it. There's a fair amount of dust under the strings there. It plays quite nicely. The action's quite low. It needs new tuners, new strings, and a damn good clean. But apart from that, this is actually going to be a half-decent instrument. It was right around here where things started to go a little bit wrong. As soon as I got that plate off and saw inside, I noticed one of the main braces was loose. A closer look reveals that it's actually completely separated from the top. This caused me to do a bit more research on the guitar itself, and it turns out that that lightning bolt is actually an S, so it's an S-Power electroacoustic guitar. I found one online for £75. Interestingly, while I was Googling it, Google gave me some related searches and it's showing up worst acoustic guitars and worst guitars of all time. So that tells you what we're dealing with. Okay, plan C. The brace has come off about there. It's going all the way across to where the preamp is here. I'm going to have to take that out and make sure that the brace is glued in on this side. If it's not, then I can at least get in and clamp it on both sides. That means I'm going to have to work out how to remove the epoxy that's holding that in. I think, because this is plastic, and I don't know what sort of plastic it is, and I don't have any samples of it to test with. I don't really want to hit it with a heat gun in case I melt it, so I think I'm going to attempt to just very carefully chip a little bit of it away. If that doesn't work, I'll try some heat. If that doesn't work, then, well, I don't know. Alright, we are officially in uncharted territory. I found that as I got underneath the epoxy, it would actually just lift off in chunks. It hadn't fully bonded to the surface underneath, so it was easy to just break off little bits. They've tried to fill the gap with a little bit of wood. It's like some toothpicks. That is taking the toothpick and epoxy trick to a whole new level. That's the cable coming from the preamp, and that connects to the battery, and then the black wire is connecting to the switch. The switch there is purely acting as a kill for the battery, which you don't actually need if you've got the right type of output jack. And we don't have the right type of output jack because this one here is a replacement that's glued in with exactly the same epoxy that the last guy used. So we will take the switch out, we'll take this off, probably replace this whole unit. The preamp is working. I have yet to decide what I'm going to do with that, but in the meantime, the guitar itself needs a bit of serious attention, so let's get rid of all of this and do that. And it just gets weirder. I was looking at how to remove the switch, and I suspect it's epoxied in. I had thought on first glance that this ornamental attachment here was actually made of rosewood. I was not expecting it to be made of rosewood, and it's not. As soon as I got my finger in there, I can feel the ridge around all of these holes where they've molded this in plastic. So this is plastic glued onto the top. That is glued onto the inside of the top. And at some point, this has actually started to come loose. There's a little gap under there, all along that edge. So I don't quite know what I'm going to do about that. But for now, I think I'm just going to leave that switch there. I'm going to cut the wire because we need to get rid of all the electronics, but, you know, it's not going to hurt anything to leave it there. And for future reference, white. Yes, the white from the preamp is connected to into the hot on the battery. Now it's time to give it a damn good clean. I used a long stick with a cloth on the end of it to mop out all the cobwebs, and then came in with a vacuum cleaner. Then I tidied up all the rest of the epoxy around the control plate and the bridge. Alright, here is where we are at. This thing's obviously made to a budget. Yeah, there's splintering in there, there's some big globs of glue in there. I suspect the whole thing is glued together with epoxy, which is probably why it's come apart. Gluing it together with wood glue would necessitate actually taking the top off, I think, to get that small brace there. The big brace, which is almost impossible to see from this side, just see it down there, it's coming up at the other end. That I've thought about how to clamp that down. I've thought about modifying a couple of clamps that I have to try and get in there. It's about there, running across there. So to get a clamp small enough to get in there and long enough to go across there, I don't have one. I thought about making one. I thought it would take this stick of Quilla here, it's an offcut, and trying to make a custom clamp. I thought about coming in from the other side with a much larger hole, which is sort of lined up with where the brace is. But even my biggest clamp would only come about halfway. So then I thought, well, I could try using a heat gun to heat up the top, and then come in with the big clamp and a piece of wood here and just screw the thing down and try and just flatten that out. The whole thing would be a massive screw around, and I just don't feel that it's worth it. It's a cheaply made guitar, and it's not even that bad, really. There's a tiny bit of dishing there. Like if it was going to get worse, if it's been left, it was at tension. It was actually in tune. If it's been left at pitch and that's all the damage that's occurred, then it's probably not going to get any worse. By doing all that to it, I do run the risk of actually making it worse. I mean, I'm heating up the entire top with a heat gun to try and flatten it out. That's risky. I'll burn a hole right through the finish. I'll melt these plastic inserts, and then it might not even glue properly. So it's just not worth the risk. The risks outweigh the benefits in this case, so I'm just not going to bother. I'm going to change the tuners, sort out the electronics, string her up, and then we'll play it. Electrically, we're going to take the path of least resistance. This is the original preamp, and it feels really crusty. It's full of dust and dirt, and it needs the 9-volt battery on board as well as the specific output jack, and both of those are stuffed for this one. So we're going to actually give that the flick. What we're going to do is attach the pickup directly to a volume knob and then directly to an output jack, and for EQ and boost we're going to use a pedal. Cheap little EQ pedal worth about $30. I soldered all the electronics together first, then I set about making the control plates. I used some acrylic because I happen to have lots of it on hand, and it also allows me to make a shaped piece of plastic to cover the holes that are already in the guitar. It also allows me to, if down the road I want to put in a proper preamp, then it's not destructive to the guitar at all. It's easy to remove. finally, the heat gun makes an appearance in this video. When it comes to bending acrylic, you really just want to get it warm enough to be able to change shape and no warmer. It will burn. If you get it too hot, it will catch fire. I've done it. I suggest you don't. When it is at the right temperature, you simply hold it onto the side of the guitar. It will assume that shape. Press it there for a few seconds until it's cooled down enough to set, and you're done. I had a little bit of trouble getting some of the ferrules out from the other side. They're just pressed in, but they came out with a little bit of help from a punch and a tiny hammer, gave everything a clean, and then inserted the new tuners. Luckily they just fit in the holes, they were the same size, so it went without a hitch. It's cleaning time. I'm using some wax and grease remover to take off the years of crud and debris and all other stuff that's on this guitar. Wax and grease remover is a fairly mild solvent. I've never had it hurt a guitar yet, but that day is coming, so I always make sure I test on a tiny area first, and it was fine, so I got in there with a soft cloth and gave everything as good a clean as I could. Nothing left to do now but string it up. I'm using Ernie Ball's Earthwood acoustic bronze strings, just a light gauge set because I don't want to put anything too heavy on there and risk doing more damage to the top. Get them stretched in there, and then we'll play it first of all acoustically, and then we'll plug it in. And yeah, so there it is. Sounds like all of $50. Um, Not a bad little project. Not a bad guitar, really. Certainly not an award-winning guitar by any stretch of the imagination, but it is playing, it is working, it is clean, and I don't have the steel string acoustic, so that's going to be great. Great thing to potter around on in the lounge. Yeah. Thanks for watching. Hit the subscribe button, and you'll see what weirdness I concoct next week. Cheers.